Welcome back. All right, so we're a couple of days away from the Stanley Cup Final getting started. We're a couple of days removed from me doing a video on the Florida Panthers and differences between the last Stanley Cup run and this one. And so I figured, why don't we do the same with the Edmonton Oilers? The Oilers now trying to win their first Stanley Cup since 1990 and a first Canadian Stanley Cup since 1993. For the Edmonton Oilers, it is interesting looking at how they got here. It took them 2 less games this time out than it took last time. Last time, 4 games to 1 against the LA Kings in the first round. This time it took 4 games to 2 against LA. Keep in mind they lost the first 2 games. So the Oilers are coming into this final having won 12 out of their last 14. Last year, they won against Vancouver in 7 in that second round. And this year, against Vegas, they won in 5. And I think beating Vegas in 5 is a lot more impressive than beating Vancouver in 7 when Shelovs was in net. I love Shelovs too. I know Artie's been fantastic for Abbotsford here. But let's be honest, the Edmonton Oilers did not come out of that series looking like they were going to win a Stanley Cup necessarily. Then they moved on and they defeated Dallas in 6 games last year. This year, 5. The Edmonton Oilers are not messing around, and they're not trailing a lot. They're playing very well throughout the game. They had trouble in the first period during the first 2 rounds, and then in the third round, not so much. The Dallas Stars had their struggles where Edmonton didn't. This is also the 4th straight season that the Edmonton Oilers have recorded more than 100 points. This year it's 101, which, for the record, is the lowest number of points they've had over that 4-year span. But the regular season numbers don't matter so much. There are plenty of examples of teams who have won Stanley Cups when the regular season numbers actually drop that year, or teams going further in the playoffs when they don't have nearly as good a season as they did the year before, when maybe they were out early in the playoffs. So 16 games to make the final this year compared to 18 last year should mean a little bit less wear and tear, and they haven't had a Game 7. They haven't faced elimination, which is insane considering they were down 2-0 against the LA Kings, and then they gave them nothing. Now, looking at the playoff numbers, McDavid obviously at the top, 25 games, 8 goals, 34 assists, 42 points last year, which is just a ridiculous total. He's not getting there this year. This year he has 16 games played, 6 goals, 20 assists, 26 points. But still, excellent numbers from McDavid. Last year in the final, 7 games played, 3 goals, 8 assists, 11 points. He won the Conn Smythe, and everybody agreed that was the right decision. Bouchard, last year, 25 games, 6 goals, 26 assists, 32 points. This year, 16 games, 6 goals, 11 assists, 17 points. In the final, they didn't allow a goal to Bouchard. 7 games, just the 5 assists for Bouchard. Hey, 5 assists in 7 games is still pretty good as well, but no goals. Draisaitl, last year in the playoffs, 25 games, 10 goals, 21 assists, 31 points. This year, he's actually scoring at a better rate. 16 games, 7 goals, 18 assists for 25 points. But in the final last year, Draisaitl was controlled. Just 3 assists in 7 games. Draisaitl needs to get a goal in Game 1. They need to get the Oilers fans into it. They need a big win at home, and they need that momentum, and they need Draisaitl to be at his best. Nugent Hopkins, another one who got shut down in the final. Now, his overall playoff numbers last year, 25 games, 7 goals, 15 assists, 22 points. This year, 16 games, 5 goals, 13 assists, 18 points. But in that final, 7 games, 1 goal, 1 assist, 2 points. So Nugent Hopkins, Draisaitl, both are going to be looking to be better in the Stanley Cup final. Bouchard, no goals in last year's final. These are players that the Oilers need to get those points from. Zach Hyman, who will not be playing in the final this year, 25 games in last year's playoffs, 16 goals, 6 assists, 22 points, coming off of a ridiculous regular season as well. This year was not as goal-filled for Zach Hyman. 15 games in the playoffs this year, 5 goals, 6 assists, 11 points at the time of the injury. And in last year's final, 7 games, 2 goals, 2 assists, 4 points, which isn't bad considering Draisaitl just had the 3 assists in the Stanley Cup final. Matthias Ekholm, last year in the playoffs, 25 games, 5 goals, 5 assists, 10 points. And of course, as I mentioned in the preview for the series, Ekholm just made his return to the playoffs against Dallas in that last game of the series, and he got an assist in that last game in the series. Last year in the final, 7 games, 1 goal, 2 assists, 3 points. But with Ekholm, you're not looking for points as much as you're looking for that defensive aspect to the game, right? Evander Kane, last year, 20 games, 4 goals, 4 assists, 8 points. He's been more productive this year in the playoffs. 15 games, 5 goals, 6 assists, 11 points. He only played 2 games in the final last year. He had no points, and he was a -4. Janmark, 25 games, 4 goals, 4 assists, 8 points. This year, 16 games, 3 goals, 1 assist, 4 points. And Janmark in the final actually was relatively productive. 7 games, 2 goals, 2 assists, 4 points last season. Warren Fogle, who of course moved on to the LA Kings, played 22 games, had 3 goals, 5 assists, 8 points. He was effective in the final as well. 7 games, 2 goals, 3 assists, 5 points. And they're going to need points from guys like Perry. Corey Perry, of course, going into his 6th Stanley Cup final. He did win the Stanley Cup in 2007. Since then, he is not. And he's been in the final numerous times to no avail. So when we look at Corey Perry's career, that's going to be a talking point. But if he wins the Stanley Cup here, then the Stanley Cup final losses will be talked about a little bit less. Not totally, but a little bit less. Now, looking at the goaltending, and this is something that people have been talking a lot about, and rightfully so. Skinner, 14-9 last year in the playoffs, 901 save percentage. This year, he's 6-4 with a 904 save percentage. And for all the bluster about how great Florida is and how they're going to tear apart Skinner, and I've seen those posts in discussions of the Stanley Cup final, Skinner last year was 3-4 in the final with a 909 save percentage. So Florida did not generally light up Skinner in that Stanley Cup final, and Skinner's been playing really, really well. Honestly, since that first round came to an end, goaltending's not been a problem for the Edmonton Oilers. Pickard, 1-1 in these playoffs, 915, or in the previous playoffs, 1-1, 915 save percentage. This year, 6-0, but an 888 save percentage. So the nice thing with this is it shows that with an 888 save percentage, if your goaltender's not playing fantastic, 2 things. 1, you make sure he doesn't face a ton of shots, and 2, you make sure you score enough goals that he still goes 6-0. So I do feel like the Oilers have learned from last year's disappointment. I think they've learned from mistakes that were made there, and there is some recent-ish history that might be on their side, and I say recent-ish because it is very unusual to see a rematch in the Stanley Cup final. The last one was 2009, which was a rematch of the 2008 Stanley Cup final between Detroit and Pittsburgh. Detroit, the veteran team, won in 08, and then the young Penguins won in 09. Back in 83 and 84, and of course this one's been talked about a lot because it involves the Oilers. The Oilers went to the final in 83 and they got schooled by the New York Islanders, and then in 84 they returned the favor. They took out the New York Islanders, who were in their run for yet another Stanley Cup. That would have been 5 in a row if they'd won in 84. So the Islanders were exhausted. They'd played a ton of hockey. For the Florida Panthers, this is their 3rd straight Stanley Cup final. So that is definitely something to keep in mind, is that that's extra mileage on these players, and keep an eye on that. As the series goes along, does Edmonton score more hits? Does Florida look like they're wearing down? And what is home ice going to mean for the Edmonton Oilers? It feels like that could be huge as well. 76 and 77, so we have to go back that far now for a rematch. Montreal and Boston. Well, that's a bad matchup for Boston, so Montreal won both. And in 68 and 69, so going back to the original expansion out of the original 6, Montreal and St. Louis met in 68 and 69. Keep in mind, St. Louis was an expansion team, so it was not a surprise that Montreal beat them in either of those Stanley Cup finals. Eventually, the Chicago Blackhawks get moved to that division with all the expansion teams to try to even things out, because they had a division of the original 6 and a division of all 6 expansion teams, and that's how St. Louis gets into the final in 68 and 69. Can you imagine if that had happened now in the internet age? Having an established 6-team division and then 6 teams that are brand new, all brand new, and one of them's guaranteed to be in the Stanley Cup. Man, would have been absolutely crazy. It is notable that this team, the Oilers, scored fewer goals during this regular season than last year by 35, but they also recorded 1 less goal against than last year. Their points total was similar, and throughout these playoffs, they've just seemed to play better and better. So for the Oilers, it really is a matter of the momentum. Once again, only losing 2 of their last 14 games in these playoffs. If they can get off to that fast start against Florida, especially if they could build up a 2-0 series lead, you never know. I don't think a split is necessarily what Edmonton's looking for. That might be what Florida's looking for. But it is going to be a fascinating series. So let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. As always, Hit like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. Will the Oilers be another like 2009 and 1984 where the team that lost came back and won the following year? Or is it going to be like 77 and 69 where the Montreal Canadiens in both cases said, no, we're still the champs and went out there and won it? Let me know your thoughts. Hit like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. Thank you guys so much for all your support as always. I will talk to you again soon.